Godzilla King of the Monsters is coming out next week. I am excited for it, and I thought this would be my chance to talk about the predecessor, Godzilla. Godzilla 2014. Godzilla 2014 is a reboot of Godzilla that came out in 2014, directed by Gareth Edwards and starring Godzilla, as well as Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ken Watanabe, Elizabeth Olsen, and Bryan Cranston. The plot of this film follows a soldier, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who just came back from the war. His dad, played by Bryan Cranston, is studying signs of a creature, and they're also figuring out something involved with these creatures that are starting to rise, known as mutos. And another creature that is starting to rise, the one and only Godzilla. Back in 2014, I remember being so excited for this movie. The trailers were incredible. Gotta say, looking back on those two trailers were some of the best trailers I've ever seen. It got me hyped for this movie. It looked amazing. This also looked like a return to form for Godzilla, since he hasn't been in American film since the 1998 film. I saw this movie in theaters in 2014. I remember liking it. I remember enjoying it, but I haven't rewatched the film since 2015, I think, so it's been a long while since I've watched this film, and with the release of Godzilla King of the Monsters on its way, I decided to give this film a rewatch. And my thoughts on Godzilla 2014? I like it. I think it's good. Do I think it's great? No, since I do have some flaws with this movie that disappointed me, but there were a lot of things about this movie I really liked. First, on my positives, this is a very well-directed movie. Gareth Edwards, the director of this movie, who would later direct Rogue One: A Star Wars Story 2 years later, he definitely knows how to create some tension, create the scope of the whole thing, making Godzilla feels like he's really there, making the other creatures, mutos, a threat. He definitely knows how to build up tension when he needs to, and I love the building of tension in certain scenes. Also, this being a very well shot movie with some great cinematography that had me glued to the screen. And what I also admire about his direction, I admire that this is more of a realistic take on Godzilla of what would happen if Godzilla or any other creature similar to Godzilla came to our world and was starting to attack us, and also creating the whole fear and tension of the whole thing. And I admire that this was a realistic take on Godzilla. The first act of this movie was great. It got me hooked into it instantly. I cared about Bryan Cranston's character so much at the beginning of this movie. It was such a great start to the movie, and I was really hoping the movie would be just as great as the first act. Bryan Cranston in this movie is fantastic. For the screen time he did have, his scenes were the best acted in the entire film. I cared about his character so much, and at the beginning, they did give him a good backstory, and he put so much emotion in his performance. Bryan Cranston was so great in this movie, but by far, my biggest issue with Bryan Cranston in this movie, he should have had more screen time. And honestly, he should have been the main character of this movie. I cared about him so much, and Bryan Cranston was doing so great in this role. I wanted more of him. I wanted him to be the main character of this movie. He should have had more screen time in this movie. And also, Ken Watanabe, as a scientist who was researching the whole thing, he also gave a good performance. There are some amazing and intense sequences in this movie. In particular, my two favorite are one involving a tsunami at Hawaii that was amazing and intense. I loved it. Also, another sequence that I loved involving Godzilla at the Golden Gate Bridge. I absolutely love that sequence. There are some amazing, intense sequences in this movie that I absolutely loved. And also, Alexander Desplat's score in this movie was great. Definitely did a good job of building tension and suspense. Some terrific visual effects on both Godzilla and the mutos. They definitely did a great job of making Godzilla feel realistic, making him feel like he's actually there, and making him so good. Really like the CGI on Godzilla. The Muto CGI are pretty good too, although maybe a bit reminiscent of the Cloverfield monster, but still really like the CGI in this movie. The third act of this movie was also really good. Definitely started to pick up. There was some great action, and I also really like this one sequence involving these soldiers and the halo jump. That was also great, and along with a great POV shot too, that was well done. And my favorite moment in the climax of this movie, with Godzilla and the mutos fighting, and Godzilla using his atomic breath on the Muto. I absolutely love that scene. Just that scene at me, just clapping and just making me feel like a little kid. I absolutely love that scene. Easily my favorite scene in the movie. Sadly, I do have some flaws with this movie. I will get to those right now. First, Aaron Taylor Johnson as the main character. He's fine in this movie. I wouldn't say he was bad in this movie, but he just wasn't at the same level as Bryan Cranston in this movie. As in terms of both development and acting wise, Aaron Taylor Johnson I felt like wasn't on the same level as Cranston. And he's fine in the movie. I wouldn't say he was bad, but his character was pretty underdeveloped. I didn't really know a lot about him, and I didn't really care for him that much whenever he was in danger. And also on a side note, him and Elizabeth Olsen in this movie play husband and wife in this movie, and a year later in Avengers Age of Ultron, they both played Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and they're both brother and sister in that movie, so bit weird. And a big issue for this film, I felt like the second act just wasn't quite as strong as the first act. I felt like the movie just got off to a strong start, but when Bryan Cranston is out of the movie, after that, I felt like that's where the movie just wasn't quite as good as it could have been. One final thing, it did get on my nerves every time they would set up a monster fight between the Mutos and Godzilla, just like, ooh, there's gonna be a monster fight, and oh, just cut away from someone watching it on the news, just okay, and you're cutting to the aftermath. And they would do that at times during this movie. They would be setting up a monster fight, it was like, ooh, here comes the creatures, cut to the aftermath, oh. Okay then. And then, oh, Godzilla and Mutos are gonna fight. Oh, you're cutting away from that. At times that did get on my nerves, just hoping a bit more action. Overall, despite its flaws, I still consider Godzilla 2014 an entertaining monster movie. It is a very well directed movie. It has a great first act and a third act, along with some amazing sequences and terrific visual effects. However, I felt like the characters were a bit lacking and the second act wasn't quite as strong. But I still find some enjoyment in this movie 5 years later, and I also think it's a good return to form for Godzilla. Overall, I am going to give Godzilla 2014 3.5 stars out of 5. It does have a lot of flaws that kept me from giving it a higher grade, but I still enjoyed this movie and found it entertaining. And if you enjoyed this movie and if you're thinking about giving it a rewatch before Godzilla King of the Monsters next week, do give it a rewatch. It is an entertaining movie despite its flaws, and I'm looking forward to Godzilla King of the Monsters next week. Hopefully that could be an improvement, maybe? We'll see. So what do you guys think of Godzilla 2014? Do you agree? Disagree with me? Let me know below. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're new here. It really means a lot. I'm Jack Benner, and look forward to another movie review.